We've got a lot of new information after the draft, so definitely going to be some different rankings in my top 30 wide receiver rankings today. Just make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So getting into our first tier, there's no changes right here because I think that these guys are going to be the most dominant. Ja'Marr Chase, CeeDee Lamb. Listen, Ja'Marr Chase is obviously got an uphill climb to be able to repeat as the wide receiver one. I'm not necessarily predicting he's going to be the wide receiver one because I think it could easily be CeeDee Lamb. This guy is, like, honestly kind of being overlooked right now in Underdog drafts behind Justin Jefferson at number 2. I think that CeeDee Lamb has way higher of a ceiling in 2025 than JJ does. That's no slight against JJ, but CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott is absolutely fantastic football to watch. And on top of the fact, they didn't do anything at wide receiver 2. The amount of volume that CeeDee Lamb is going to get in 2025 is going to blow your mind. It's going to be freaking nuts. Ja'Marr Chase is still going to be great as well. It's hard to bet against him, but I believe CeeDee Lamb and Ja'Marr Chase are clear separators from the rest of the pack here. Really, really top dog tier on this one. Dropping down to our next tier, I still got Puka Nacua at 3 and Amon-Ra St. Brown at 4. Listen, with Puka Nacua, it's also a situation where I look at and I say this guy's got a great veteran quarterback who just did not decline in 2024. I think that him coming back still means that him and Puka Nacua are definitely going to work really well together. He's got Devontae Adams now instead of Cooper Kupp, who, by all indicating factors based on film last year, would indicate that Devontae Adams has still more left in the tank than Cooper Kupp. So, hypothetically, it could eat into Puka Nacua, right? It could. I just don't agree that there's enough target share there for him to eat into Puka Nacua. I think that his target share, Devontae's, will be totally separate from Puka's. Puka will be left untouched. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have continued to say this over the offseason, and I'm actually kind of fascinated to get into discussions about this with people. Ben Johnson was such a great offensive coordinator for the Lions. With him gone, it's going to leave some guys that were really good players in bad spots. I think that when you look at the Lions as a team, they have so much talent that nobody's debating that. What was incredible what Ben Johnson did was he was able to get so much out of everybody. I think that this next offensive coordinator is going to be so hard for him to be able to replicate that level of success. I think it's going to be the big 3. Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown benefits from more volume this year on top of it. Justin Jefferson at 5. Nico Collins at 6. I've already gotten pushback from my Justin Jefferson take this offseason. I get it. JJ's a great player and everything like that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't draft Justin Jefferson. My point on this is that if you're looking at the range of outcomes for some of the top players in fantasy drafts, Justin Jefferson is kind of being priced to his ceiling. And of course, he's a great player. He has a great ceiling and everything. But this is the second straight year where there's been a quarterback change. And on top of that, this quarterback that they're switching to is not exactly known for having a laser arm like Sam Darnold. He's also not coming from a school where he threw 30, 35 times a game. That just did not happen in Michigan. Michigan had him running the ball primarily, throwing 15 to 20 times per game. I don't know if he can fill those shoes. And I think that Justin Jefferson will be kind of pushed up against the grain here to get the most out of this whole situation. Nico Collins at 6. I think he's in great shape, really untouched by this whole Texans wide receiver shakeup. That was really a display of how much lack of confidence that they have behind Nico Collins. Tank Dell may not ever play meaningful football again. Stephon Diggs is gone. Christian Kirk is there aging. So they drafted 2 wide receivers in the second round. And I just think that Nico Collins, when you look at everything that's happened, Nico Collins is still automatically getting the majority of the target share in this offense. And the guy's a beast. So I like Nico Collins here quite a bit as well in this tier. Dropping out to our next tier, I'm really holding strong. Rashee Rice at 7. I think Rashee Rice, guys, it's one of my favorite values right now. If you're looking at Underdog prices right now, he's the wide receiver 20. Now, that price rises basically a couple times a week. At Best Ball Mania and these other drafts that you can get in, they've been open for basically about a week now. So basically over the last week, it's been rising. So this is the time to draft Rashee Rice because it will continue to rise. Obviously, you have to factor in what if he does get suspended. I'm not there yet with that whole situation. The point I'm making here is that in these best ball leagues, you can win millions of dollars in best ball mania. You got to go for the upside. And if Rashee Rice plays, the guy has top 10 upside. Malik Neighbors at 8 and Brian Thomas Jr. at 9 are two second-year players right here that I have lots of confidence in as players, but not as much with the quarterback situation. Malik Neighbors is in less of a pickle this year because they did not get a big-time athlete at the wide receiver position in the first round. They got Abdul Carter, a pass rusher. So Malik Neighbors is his alpha in the Giants wide receiver room is not being questioned. He will be the alpha. It just comes down to if the quarterbacks can get him the ball, whether it's Russell Wilson for the majority, whether it's Jameis, whether it's Jackson Dart. It doesn't matter. I have uncertainties with all of these guys. So Malik Neighbors is going to get by based on his talent being so great, but I don't think he has a top 5 ceiling quite yet. And then I think with Brian Thomas Jr. here at 9, several weeks ago, I had him ranked at number 7. I think Brian Thomas Jr. with Trevor Lawrence actually will do pretty well this year. But the problem, obviously, is Travis Hunter will eat into this. He will. They did not trade up from number 5 to the number 2 spot in this draft to not use him as a wide receiver. And, of course, they've already said, we're going to use this guy primarily as a wide receiver. They want this guy to get the ball. They want this to be like a Jamar Chase, T. Higgins offense. That's what the Jags are looking for. So I think that you have to be crazy to think that Brian Thomas Jr. will not have his pie eaten into by Travis Hunter. And I think that's why I had to move him down a couple spots from the last ranking. Drake London at 10, Jackson Smith-Njigba at 11. Drake London, I actually have come around to really liking Drake London this year. Michael Penix is going to be obviously the factor here that you're going to need to take into account because he's a new quarterback. We saw him play 6 games last year, and it just wasn't enough. He got thrown into the fire, basically unplanned. The Falcons had no plan to actually play him at all in 2024, but they had to because Kirk was falling apart. So there was no plan for Michael Penix in 2024. He gets thrown into the fire. I'm basically just kind of wiping the slate clean on that one. But I do think it's an upgrade for Drake London. I think a full offseason with Penix is going to be key. Penix was already a pro-ready quarterback prospect coming out of college. I like Drake London a lot with Michael Penix in 2025. And then JSN, I'm stuck with JSN. I've always loved Jackson Smith-Njigba. I still like him quite a bit for fantasy, but I am worried. Sam Darnold could easily just crash and burn with the Seahawks. The good thing that I've always said with JSN is that JSN is a great route runner, and he's so good at getting open. And I think that plays to the advantage of playing with a bunch of different types of quarterbacks. I think that it's hard to miss JSN because I think he gets open in so many ways. So I think he's kind of the modern day Keenan Allen, where he'll be really good with whatever quarterback you throw at him, but I definitely am not on board with the constant change of the offensive coordinator and at this point the quarterback position. And then rounding up this tier, I've got A.J. Brown here. And listen, A.J. Brown, I think this is sort of around his ceiling. A.J. Brown, I just don't have any excitement for. I've drafted him once out of my 12 best ball teams so far. And it's only because I think that in a best ball format, you're going to get big games from A.J. Brown at some points. You will. But the problem is it's not going to be consistent. This is a run-first team without question. This is Saquon Barkley's team. A.J. Brown with the Eagles, I just don't see. I think he's descending at this point. As long as he's an Eagle, I think he is descending in fantasy football. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in your drafts, whether you're doing Underdog drafts, whether you're doing an ESPN or a Yahoo draft, you're going to have people who are going to take A.J. Brown because of familiarity higher than he should go. Whereas you're going to leave a guy like Rashee Rice at the back of the 4th round. Rashee Rice is such a better value with higher upside than A.J. Brown has. So if you want to take advantage of Rashee Rice's rising price right now, it's the time to do it. Go to Underdog using that link in the description and in the comments and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. They'll match that first deposit that you make when you hit that link. Use that code FFN. All you got to do is deposit the money. The Best Ball Mania is $25. The Schnauzer's a really good one to get in right now. That's a $3 draft. And then you obviously have the Puppy, which is a $5 draft. So you put your money in, they'll match that first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. And this is the way I won $19,000 playing Underdog last year. I did really well in some of these drafts. I won $19,000. So I obviously think you should give yourself a shot at the big money here. Dropping down to our next tier. Terry McLaurin at 13, Ladd McConkey at 14. I really like Terry again this year. Like, Terry, last year was the first year I actually, in his NFL career, have been big on Terry McLaurin in fantasy football. It fits. Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback. Like, he's not just a great running quarterback. That guy is a great quarterback. And you saw it all last year. Before the season started, his teammates were calling him a great player already. I digress a little bit because obviously looking into this year, I have even raised concerns that Jaden Daniels could easily have a sophomore slump. I still think that Terry McLaurin is in such an alpha dog position as the wide receiver one, and I think that gives him top 15 upside with a really good quarterback. Ladd McConkey at 14, I think that Ladd is in a good position because they drafted Trey Harris, who's a completely different player. That's more of like a Quentin Johnston type of player, Mike Williams type of player, than it is close to Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is going to lead the team in targets without question. Really, the main question is how much are they going to throw the ball? Because their run game could be dominant this year. They've already got Amarian Hampton in the first round. They got Najee Harris as well to back him up. They just tendered, I think, J.K. Dobbins to, the fact that he could be on this team. That's another great piece as well. This team will be so run-centric, obviously. And so I just kind of worry about Ladd's upside on a weekly basis. I get it. He had a great end to the season. I like Ladd McConkey. He helped me win $15,000 in one Underdog tournament. But I'm just a little bit concerned with people matching up with this price right now. I think this is kind of close to his ceiling. Garrett Wilson at 15, T. Higgins at 16. I've voiced the concerns about Gary Wilson. Like, I like Gary Wilson a lot as a player. It really just bums me out every year with this quarterback situation. It just sucks. Like, I really wish they would get some stability. The only upside, I think, is that, like, there's going to be chemistry, theoretically, with Justin Fields being the college quarterback for Garrett Wilson. But I don't know. I just don't think that this one's going to work out great. I think he's basically being drafted around where he should be, and that doesn't make me super excited to take him because I don't see tons of upside for upward movement. T. Higgins at 16. Look, I hate to be the wet blanket on things, guys, but T. Higgins being valued as a top 12 wide receiver in Underdog drafts is crazy to me. It really is. Like, I get it. If you're in a best ball format, the guy's going to give you big weeks. No question about it. But he's also pretty much guaranteed to miss some games. And last year was a peak year, and he was also fighting for a contract. Well, the guy got paid. And I'm not trying to say that he's not going to be good and he's going to take his foot off the gas because he got paid. But, guys, it's really hard. Like, he just hasn't done this very many times. So when T. Higgins last year is being drafted as, like, the wide receiver 25, the wide receiver 30, it makes tons of sense to go get T. Higgins. But this year he's being drafted so high. And this will carry over to ESPN drafts, to Yahoo drafts as well. I hate to be the wet blanket here. I love T. Higgins, the player. I love this Bengals offense as a whole for fantasy. But I think he's being overdrafted, and I just don't think it makes much sense. Dropping out to our next tier, Marvin Harris Jr. at 17 and Jalen Waddle at number 18. So Marvin right now is also in a tough spot. Just because I've said, throughout this offseason too, I really have liked Marvin basically since I saw him at Ohio State, knowing that he's the son of a football legend. But Marvin Harris Jr., I don't love this Cardinals landing spot as much as I did last year. Kyler Murray, there is a fact out there that Kyler Murray has not supported but one top 25 wide receiver in his career for one season, and it was DeAndre Hopkins back in 2020. There's just not a ton of good history on Marvin's side. And I'm not even concerned about how he looked last year. He actually did fine on the scale of the majority of rookies at the wide receiver position in history. So I think he'll take the leap because I think he's a really good player still and a really good talent. But I just don't know about this fit with Kyler. I personally think it could have been better. Jalen Waddle is one of my favorite values right now in Underdog drafts. There's no question. I think he's going to be better than Tyreek. And you'll notice you haven't seen Tyreek yet. I'll give you a little hint. You're not going to. Tyreek Hill began the plummet this past year. And I'll tell you why I know this. Last year I did a video where I went through the age cliff for wide receivers, whatever that age cliff was, and what happened after they dropped out of the top 12 in fantasy football production. And what I found is these wide receivers around Tyreek's age who ended up falling outside of the top 12 at his age range, they never returned. Never returned. So I think we've seen the best from Tyreek Hill. And I think that opens up Waddle a little bit here. I think Jalen Waddle really does have a top 15, top 12 ceiling this year. I think he's one of my favorite picks. He's one of my most drafted players already on Underdog right now. He's going as like the wide receiver 31. It's a great value. I think he's got tons of upside. I love Jalen Waddle right now at 18. Mike Evans at 19. Ted McMillan at 20. Listen, I've said it over and over. Mike Evans is really tough for me to rank because obviously I feel like, historically, this is a disrespectful ranking, right? Obviously, Mike's ceiling is top 5. I get that. Everybody gets that. But we're at the point where any year now, you can be caught holding the bag, and he could just immediately plummet your team, because he's either going to be a high-end wide receiver 2 on your team or low-end wide receiver 1 draft-wise. So it's just the year that I'm like, is it the year that we could see it from Mike? I hope it's not. I always love Mike Evans, but I do worry about Mike this year. And when you add in, Emeka Egbuka through the draft, it makes me more curious of like, are they seeing something here where the end is imminent? I do worry about Mike this year. Ted McMillan at 20. Listen, I'm not a huge Ted McMillan guy. I really never was this whole process. I knew the moment I saw the guy's size, people were going to be screaming, Drake London, Mike Evans Jr. The guy is nowhere close to the athlete that either of those guys are. He's just nowhere close. And I think that Ted McMillan being drafted in the top 10 obviously will signify that they will make him the wide receiver 1. Because Xavier Legette didn't show great last year as a first-round pick, and he was also at the back of the first round. So he was basically a second-round pick. They're going to give Ted McMillan every opportunity here, and as long as Bryce Young can continue to really, gain chemistry with Dave Canales, the offensive coach over there, I think it will be good for fantasy production, and I think that puts Ted in a decent spot. Dropping down to our next tier right here, Travis Hunter at 21, Davante Adams at 22. Travis Hunter, like I said earlier, I think you're crazy if you don't think that Travis Hunter will eat into Brian Thomas Jr.'s production. And it feels weird having 2 Jags wide receivers as top 25 when I haven't seen great stuff from Trevor Lawrence since 2022. But I just think that Travis Hunter is so talented. He's one of the most unique players the NFL has seen since Deion. I think they're going to get him the ball in so many ways, not just as a pure outside wide receiver. Like, the guy will line up in the slot. They will use him out of the backfield. I believe this. So they're going to get him the ball in so many ways. There's going to be boom games. I think there's going to be bust games as well. He'll be a boom or bust player, but I think he will be a top 25 guy this year. Davante Adams at 22, I think is a great wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. Even better wide receiver 3. Davante Adams, I think, is going to be super efficient on a touch-by-touch basis in the Rams offense. Because, again, you can't double Davante Adams with Puka Nacua, obviously. And you can't double Puka when you've got Davante Adams as well. Unless Davante Adams falls off a cliff this year, which could happen. It definitely could. If I think it could happen for Mike, it could happen for Davante. But Davante Adams, just based on what we saw last year, looks healthy, looks ready to go, clean as, crisp routes as ever. I like Davante Adams still a lot this year. DJ Moore at 23, Xavier Worthy at 24. DJ Moore, there's just too much going on here right now. Like, I want to root for DJ Moore because I've always liked him. But there's just this whole thing with Caleb last year. They just did not work well together. And I get it. Shane Waldron was a bad offensive coordinator. Now they've got Ben Johnson. Hopefully he will help mend that gap that was clearly there between these two last year. But there's even more weapons to choose from. They drafted Colson Loveland in the first round. They're going to get him involved. They drafted Luther Burden in the second round. They will get him involved. So I just worry about all these weapons and DJ's upside this year. I've got to have him at 23. And Xavier Worthy at 24. Obviously, if Rashee Rice misses time, Worthy has got potential to be a top 15 guy. There's no question about that. You should definitely be drafting Worthy based on upside and where he's going. He's like the wide receiver 21 on Underdog right now. And I can see him finishing higher than this. Worthy is just in a weird spot because I don't think he'll ever be a true number one in an NFL offense, but I do think he's going to be a really good fantasy player playing for the Chiefs, playing with Mahomes as his quarterback. I think he's going to be good. I just don't think that his upside is as high as Rashee Rice's when Rashee Rice does return. And then Courtland Sutton rounded out at 25 in this tier right here. I like Courtland Sutton a lot just because of the fact that really in Denver, like, there's just not much going on, right? Like, they have Devon Vele, who was an old rookie last year, and he's just not the talent that Sutton is. And then they've got Marvin Mims Jr., who is a good player, but he's just not wide receiver one material. Sutton will continue to be the target hog in this offense right here. And I think Bo Nix is going to be better in year two with Sean Payton. I really love the fit with Sean Payton a lot. I think there's a lot of good things for Denver on the horizon. I still don't think that Sutton is going to be some great explosion player this year in fantasy, but I do think he'll be a top 25 guy. Dropping down to our last tier, Chris Godwin at 26 and Debo at 27. Every year now I feel like I'm under-ranking Chris Godwin, and I probably am again. I just worry about this injury. You know, that ankle injury was brutal, obviously, and he suffered a knee injury years ago, and he really didn't recover from it until this past year. But Godwin has just been so steady and such a good presence in Tampa, and they signed him back to a pretty expensive couple-year deal. So they obviously wanted the guy back in the building. They felt like he was going to be okay. But I do worry about Chris Godwin a little bit, and maybe I'm really wrong for doing that. I've drafted Godwin a couple times. Obviously, there's a lot of upside there. But I am a little worried about Chris Godwin heading into 2025 coming off this ankle injury. And Deebo Samuel, another good value in drafts right now. Wide receiver 38 on Underdog right now. Deebo is going to finish higher than that. Unless he completely lost like all of his speed and all of his physicality last year, I just don't see how he doesn't finish higher. Deebo Samuel is going to be used just like he was in San Fran with Washington. Cliff Kingsbury can get the best out of his weapons. He proved it last year. So Deebo Samuel, I just think, is going to have a resurgent year with a good quarterback. And again, not your typical wide receiver here. This is far from that. He's going to get carries. This guy is going to be used at the goal line. This guy is going to get the ball in a lot of ways. I think Deebo Samuel has a pretty decent bounce back here. 27 honestly feels kind of low if he could be the player that I know he can be. And then Zay at 28 here, I think that Zay is what he is. I've said this for a while. Zay is what he is. I don't feel like I'm disrespecting him by putting him down here at 28 because I just don't see there's tons of upside. Like, they clearly like Rashad Bateman, right? They clearly like their tight end situation. So it's not like he's going to see this big surge in targets this year. He did basically what he did in his rookie year in 2024. So coming into 2025, I don't see how things change. This is basically what he is. And then Calvin Ridley at 29 and Jerry Jeudy at 30 to round us out. Calvin is going to be really interesting this year, actually. This could be a low ranking for Calvin. I'm putting him down here for a couple of reasons. Number one is that the history with rookie quarterbacks is not great for wide receivers, especially veteran wide receivers. Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, that's kind of an outlier situation there. With Calvin, he's coming into 2025 at 30 years old with a new quarterback, and I think it could be really good. If Cam Ward turns out to be good, Calvin really will be a good discount in drafts, but I'm just a little bit worried to put him much higher than this. And then Jerry Jeudy at 30. Jerry Jeudy's just in a really unique spot. Like, he has so many quarterbacks, but none at the same time. Like, that's the reality that the Browns are seeing right now. They have so many quarterbacks, but also basically none at the same time. So if it goes how I think it'll go, which will be that they play Joe Flacco for the majority of the season as long as they can, I think Joe Flacco does provide upside. But I also think it's pretty much inevitable that Flacco does not play all 17 games. I think at some point he will be replaced, and that is where things get crazy for Jerry Jeudy. That's why he's got to be down here at 30. So let me know what you think of the rankings right now in 2025. And if you want to see the top 50 overall rankings for 2025, click on this video right here.